So one of the reasons is pregnancy is a reason why women are excused for actually breaking their fast. So, for example, either their fasting would have an effect on their pregnancy, and it does not fear anything for their child, which is not suckling. It's not permissible for her to break a fast if it doesn't impact it. And there are women that are pregnant, they fast, and they don't have any problem, and they're not negatively impacted, as I've said. The second scenario is when a woman fears for her safety. She's pregnant, she cannot stand, walk, or do anything because she gets tired. She fears for the safety of her child, and in this case, it is permissible for her to break her and skip her fasting. There's also a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah has waived for the traveller half of the prayer and fasting, and for the pregnant or breastfeeding women fasting. Some scholars said that if she fears for the safety of her child, then it's mandatory for her to break her fast. There's also an issue of dispute whether skipping these days for a woman, if they need to give like an expiation, a kafara. And the most authentic opinion is that if a pregnant woman or a breastfeeding woman skips Ramadan for the reasons that I've mentioned, they do not have to give any expiation. They need to just make up those missed days later on. And the second reason is postnatal bleeding. The excuse that permits a person to skip Ramadan is for a woman to be in her menses or in her postnatal bleeding. So a woman who have this excuse must not fast, and they must make up them later on when the obstacle has been uplifted. So a number of related issues and questions related to this topic. So for example, if a woman was fasting and while she was fasting she sees her menses a few seconds before sunset, the fasting is invalid. The opposite is also correct. So if a woman in her menses throughout the night of Ramadan, and then when it is a few minutes before the break of dawn, she sees a purity, she is obliged to fast the following day. So what happens if a woman was menstruating and after the adhan of Fajr by a couple of minutes she sees a purity? Can she fast? No, she can't, because Fajr's already happened, and that's when she, was pure now, and just because of these few minutes, she didn't see a purity and she has to make up for that day. What happens if a woman miscarriages during the day of Ramadan? If the fetus comes out without any features of the human being, then that is not classed as postnatal bleeding. Rather, this is just normal bleeding. She prays and she fasts. However, if someone is pregnant, the fetus is of like 60 days or 50 days, comes out, chops some meat and blood. In this case, she continues to fast and pray, and this is not postnatal bleeding. However, if the fetus comes out in the form of a human being with the head, the arm, the legs, in this case, this is not postnatal bleeding. She completely refrains from praying, fasting, and this usually happens if after the pregnancy is 80 days, sometimes 80 or 90 days. As we're certain that the fetus is 120 days, and it's a human being, and the soul has been breathed into it. If it's less than 80 days, this is not a form of human being, and any bleeding is not postnatal bleeding, so she should pray and fast. This is where I conclude my video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.